Alright, let's just go over for today's episode real quick. Let's see, talking about Bioshock, City of Rapture, Kevin Levine is a genius, whatever Big Daddy's like in bed, obviously, the basic stuff. What else do you got here?
I am Andrew Ryan, and I'm here to ask you a question.
Is this a quiz?
Is a man not entitled to the sweat of his brow?
I mean, sure, I guess.
No, says the man in Washington. It belongs to the poor.
What guy in Washington?
No, says the man in the Vatican. It belongs to God.
Like the Pope?
No, says the man in Moscow. It belongs to everyone.
Are these like people you know? Or...
I rejected those answers. Instead, I chose something different. I chose the impossible. I chose Rapture.
Is that a new Starbucks
city
order?
Where the artist would not fear the censor, where the scientist would not be bound by petty morality, where the great would not be constrained by the small. And with the sweat of your brow, Rapture can become your city as well. Welcome to 3VO. We're talking about Bioshock. Hey everybody, welcome to 3VO, where we're all on the same team. I'm Brenden, one of your hosts.
And I'm the other one, Jordan.
And if you're new here, we're just two big old nerds who love to share our love of video games, specifically by highlighting and discussing our favorite moments, characters, missions, and quests. So if you too are a lover of video games, then this is the show for you. Today, we're going to be talking about the game Bioshock, but first, let's talk about what we've been up to. Jordan, what are you playing?
Right now, so something that happened, I don't know the exact specificity of like the merger or the buyout or whatever, but all of the EA games are now on Game Pass for Xbox.
Yes.
So, instead of playing anything that I should be playing for the podcast, I apologize. I went through the first Mirror's Edge game, and I'm now going through Mirror's Edge Catalyst, which was a sequel, a highly underrated series of games. They were another couple games that I love that weren't perfect, but were definitely really fun and very inventive. So that's what I've been doing, is looking at a whole new catalog of games.
Nice. I too have also 100% been totally diverging from what I should be playing for the podcast because of the EA Pass. Most notably, well, a couple. Do you recall? I don't know if you remember this game from like ancient times ago, but there was a computer game called it was called Alice by American McGee.
American McGee.
And it was like a dark like telling of Alice. Well, there's a sequel which I didn't know about until I saw the EA Pass stuff, and I was like, huh! So I started playing that. But then also I downloaded this cozy sim game called Spiritfarer. Basically, you run a boat, and you're like the new ferryman, and you ferry spirits to the like other side.
Huh.
It's so cute, so cozy. Yeah, basically you wake up in the beginning of the game, and Charon, the like ferryman to the underworld, is like, hey, you're gonna be the new Spiritfarer now, bye kid, and like goes to the other side.
It just bounces.
Yeah, pretty much. And you have to like get a boat, and you start collecting spirits, and they're all these like different animal spirits, and you have to attend their needs and stuff, and until they're ready to cross to the other side, and then you take them to the other side. It's really cute. It's kind of sad, honestly.
Sounds like it, yeah.
But it's great. You can make food for them, and you can fish, and you can hug the spirits. It's great.
Is this an EA game that came out with whatever like the patch thing was?
I'd have to double check. I don't know if I just saw it while I was perusing all of the new games, or if it's specifically EA. I'd have to double check, but it's very, very fun.
Okay, regardless of EA, it is one of the new like Game Pass.
I think
free
so.
games.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the free games. Absolutely.
Okay, I mean, it sounds like it hits like all of like the sort of like indie developer tick boxes. You know, like it's an interesting concept. It's a little sad. You know, it's everything you need in that sort of weird indie title.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would recommend it if you're a fan of like cozy simulation games like that.
Those aren't normally my speed. Sometimes they hit me just right and I get into them, but yeah, normally I need a little bit. I get why people like them. It's just a personal thing. I need a little bit more, otherwise I fall asleep.
I totally hear you. You have to be the right personality. I totally get it.
Yeah.
Well, great. That's what we've been up to. So let's dive into what we're here to talk about, Bioshock. All right, everybody. So it's time to actually start talking about what we're here for, and that's Bioshock. I want to start by saying, spoiler alert, like spoilers ahead. If you haven't played this game, like stop everything that you're doing. Like if you're gonna play it, stop everything you're doing. Don't watch this podcast. Go play it, then come back.
Yeah, there's literally no way to talk about this game without spoiling it. The first note I have from the intro of the game is a huge spoiler for the rest of the game.
Yeah, so honestly, like just stop what you're doing if you're gonna play it, if you've been thinking about playing Bioshock. I mean, it has been out for like 13 years, so like go play it. But if you don't want to be ruined on it, stop right now. You've been warned.
The full like remastered set for all 3 Bioshock games is like $10 right now on Xbox Live, and I'm assuming a similar price for PlayStation or Steam. So if you haven't done it yet, do yourself a favor and pick it up, because no matter what, it's an excellent game.
Absolutely. Now that being said, hopefully everybody has left that hasn't played it yet, and we can actually start diving into the juicy details. So, Bioshock was a game that came out in 2007. It's in the first-person shooter genre of games, and basically you are playing Jack, who has crash-landed from a plane in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and you've stumbled upon the utopian city of Rapture, which is at the bottom of the ocean, and it's all falling apart. And basically, you have to fight your way out from this like 1950s themed utopian society that has just completely gone to shit.
There's a fun quote. I fell into a fun hole on YouTube where I was just watching interviews with the game director and creator. Just want to make sure I have it correctly. Kevin Levine, because I've been screwing up and calling him Ken whenever I started my notes on stuff.
Ken. Ken.
Just
we're
Ken.
Good friends, Yeah,
Ken. You're good pals. But I was watching a thing where they asked him like where the inception of the game came from for him, and to paraphrase, basically he said he wanted to take Ayn Rand's philosophies and apply them to a realistic setting.
That makes so much sense.
Right, doesn't it? And it's this is my biggest thing for this one. Like, to me, as far as any other video game out there to make the argument about whether video games are art or not, I think this one probably has to be at the top in a certain sense. I get it's done by a big developer, and a lot of people don't like that. And there are games that are quote unquote prettier or maybe structured a little bit better, but just for coming in and sort of really making a statement about society and being a social commentary as far as like a piece of media goes, that's where Bioshock beats a lot of other things out there, I feel like.
Yeah, undoubtedly, because the whole time you're playing through the game, meeting your like goals and everything, there's all of this like yikesy society stuff sprinkled in, and you're just like, man, no wonder it all fell apart down here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. His argument for it is, just to go and do the quote a little bit here. What I was trying to do with Bioshock was to say, okay, well, in Atlas Shrugged, an Ayn Rand book, that's a utopia where Ayn Rand, who made the philosophy, made all the rules, and all the characters were under her control. What if things weren't under everybody's control? Essentially, actually inserting the human element into that type of like utopian philosophy where everything works fine and everything's perfect.
Right, exactly. What actually happens, because that's so throughout the game, as you start, you're not really aware of what happened down here. You're just kind of thrown into this, post-apocalyptic situation in this what was supposed to be a utopia at the bottom of the sea. And it was like a society cordoned off from the rest of the world that had its own rules, its own thing. It was kind of like its own like city-state, I suppose you could say. And you're kind of trying to piece together exactly what happened as the main character, throughout the entirety of the story. And what you find out is that, like, everything was cool for, like, a little while, and then because there were no rules, everything went way off track. And there was no oversight, essentially, is what happened. You know, everybody was allowed to do whatever the hell they wanted to, in the way of, like, genetic engineering and industry and, like, just lots of different things, and everything falls apart. So don't do that.
Yeah. It's a game I wish I could play again for the very first time, because in the beginning of the game, you like Brenden says, your plane crash lands, you walk into this lighthouse, you end up in this thing called the bathysphere, which is essentially just a one-way transportation to Rapture from the surface. And as you're going down all the different fathoms, you see these, like, ads going by for Rapture, and it's like, it's typical stuff, like a poster for your main antagonist, Andrew Ryan, and a bunch of other stuff. And there's one that just is talking about telekinesis.
Yes.
So there's a small moment where you're first time playing, you're going, wait, what?
Absolutely. Or even, like, in that first kind of main area that you get to, there's an ad for, like, electro bolts, and it's like this, like, dad, and he's, like, holding a kid, and the kid is, like, touching the light bulb, and the light bulb's illuminating, and you're just like, what?
To go back real quick to the very, very beginning of the game. So, like we said, it starts off with your character, the character Jack, on a plane right before a crash lands. Did you catch the note on his gift that he pulls out?
Yes. So and we're kind of getting to the end of the story here.
We don't have to talk about it too much right now. I just want to know if you caught that, because it was the first time I'd ever caught that.
Right. So this replay that I just did for the podcast was the second total time that I've ever played it. So it would have been the first time that I would have understood the significance of what you're referring to. And it is, like, the first instance of that phrase. Do we just want to talk about it?
We really should out the gate, because, like, we already warned people about spoilers and stuff like that.
So then let's jump to the end a little bit, explain it, and then we can work our way back. So if you haven't played the game and you're still listening, basically you find out that you are like a sleeper agent, essentially. You were born in Rapture, and you were set to activate, essentially, when a certain activated, like, phrase was uttered to you. And the phrase is, "Would you kindly?" And at the very beginning of the game, there's a note that is on this package that you're holding, and it says, "Would you kindly?" on it. So it's like, it's one of those things that you wouldn't catch the first time you play, but definitely is rewarding the second, third, fourth time you play this game. It's just one of those little things.
It's to me, I wrote it down later in my notes, but just, like, the twist for this game that we've already given away. Sorry, we couldn't avoid it. There's no way to avoid it in talking about it. But to me, it is akin to the twist at the end of The Sixth Sense, of finding out, if we're spoiling everything. People know, I won't mention it. Most people know what the hell I'm talking about, but, like, to me, it's on that level, because it's a good twist isn't something that is just, like, shocking once, and then when you watch it or play something again, you're just like, oh, okay, so that was just for the shock value of it. It makes it more interesting. Like, going through and playing Bioshock again and looking for those hints and those clues, which are there, and they're all over the place. They're everywhere in the game.
Absolutely.
It makes it's still worthwhile to play through it again, even though you know the big twist at the end.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Because even some of the, like, intricacies in the diaries, like how they're, like, dropping the narrative throughout is like really, like, it's crazy to have that lens on it after having played the game once and reviewing those things, because you're just like, oh, you know.
It's true.
And definitely with the big twist at the end, absolutely.
And the reveal of it is so good. It's so good the way that they have the reveal for it.
The whole moment
with you and Andrew Ryan. I mean, just like, do we want to jump in and start talking about characters then, since we're kind of...
So just to provide some context for anybody who's still here that hasn't played the game. Basically, you as the main character, you get dropped into Rapture. You have no idea what's going on. This guy contacts you. He says, "Hey, my name is Atlas. I don't know how you got down here, but, like, I'm trying to get out too. And let's work together. I gotta save my wife and my child, and they're over here. let's work together. And you never see him, but basically he helps lead you along, because most of the residents of Rapture have gone crazy and are out for blood and yada yada. You get the idea. Yeah. It's revealed later on that Atlas is not your friend and actually had activated you for the sleeper agent essentially that you were, and had you go kill who you thought was the main antagonist in the game, but really wasn't. And then Atlas reveals himself to be the big bad antagonist who was against the other guy the whole time. And then you have to go find and kill him because now he's trying to, like, shut you down, essentially.
Yeah.
So there's some framework for the people who may not know.
Right. No, I got you. And then Atlas is so good. Again, obviously within the name itself as a reference to more of the Ayn Rand world of literature and whatnot. Uh-huh. And even within the character itself, because he's this, as Atlas, this ultra altruistic, just wants to help, just wants to save Rapture, wants to save his family type of character, which is littered throughout everything that Ayn Rand does. This is another one of the ones where it's just like, it's the problem with the podcast, but I love it. It's just like, I love this game so much. Just everything about it was so incredibly well thought out.
What do you mean problems? This podcast doesn't have problems, John. There's no problems here.
Zero problems within this podcast. But within that one, what you are led to believe as the main villain of the game, which is a character named Andrew Ryan, who is the person who established, created Rapture. Also, looks like. Also, really, really just, to me, looks like Walt Disney and Citizen Kane had like a love child.
Why are you right?
I mean, look at him. He looks like, that's what he looks like.
We need a picture of him, like, on the screen.
Yeah.
To, like,
say, put it up and tell me I'm wrong. Put it up and tell me that I'm wrong.
Oh my god. No, you're not. That's the sad thing. We were starting to talk about the moment with Andrew Ryan where you finally get to him.
Yes.
So you finally get to the guy and you think it's like towards the end of the game. You're like, cool, I'm gonna get the big bad guy and then I'm gonna grab my buddy Atlas and we're gonna get out of here. And all's well that ends well. And you get there and Andrew Ryan is like, actually, you're a sleeper agent and you've been activated and this is your activation phrase. And now I can actually control you a bit. And then basically orders you to kill him.
Yeah.
Self.
Yeah. He tells you to kill him, and then you bash his head in with a golf club.
Little bit.
Not a little bit, quite a bit actually.
While telling you that you haven't made any free choices and you are essentially a slave.
At all. And the whole game, that everything you've done has been by design and by the creator, which I also think is like a weird commentary on video games itself as a concept.
A little bit, huh? Yeah.
Just like because if you don't move forward with what the game wants you to do, then nothing fucking happens.
Yeah. But that whole moment is so crazy because it's nothing that you could have expected the first time you played through that game. Nothing at all. Because you've had no indication at all that things weren't exactly as you thought that they were, which is why I think Mastershock, why Bioshock is so masterful, because everything seems totally like face value. Like you're like, yeah, Atlas is my guy, and like functionally as like a video game, because it's hard to like disconnect that a little bit. Functionally, well, while you're playing as like a video game player, you're like, oh, this is just the guy that tells me what to do and gives me missions. Like, this is that function. And you kind of don't look past it at a certain point. So to have that completely, like, you know, that rug pulled out from under you is so jarring.
It is a great use of just like using established expectations within a certain medium in order to trick somebody, essentially. Yeah, but in the best way, and absolutely the best way. But you're right. Like it would kind of be like playing through the entirety of Ocarina of Zelda and then finding out that Navi was Ganondorf the whole time.
Ocarina of Time, but yes.
What did I say?
Ocarina. You said Ocarina of Zelda.
That's look. I don't play the Zelda games.
I just had to defend my turf a little bit. It's fine.
Fair enough. All right, Brenden, tell us more about Mastershock.
Rude. But so now there's not too many characters that are like actually on your side by the end of the game. There's like, I think, one. But what are some of your characters that you like love to hate?
Love to hate. I'm a very big fan. So throughout the game, you also get these. Essentially, each stage sort of has its own. I think with one exception, each stage sort of has its own mini boss its own boss that you kind of have to fight to get past and move into the next area and whatnot. My personal favorite, just because of how involved he is with the whole area and just like that, the character type is so good to me. Sander Cohen,
yes,
is a big one for me. He's this insane artist. I don't know how else to put it, but he's this. It's the whole free reign idea. There are no rules. You could do whatever you want. And then what do people do without those rules set in place? They end up going to the extreme. And Sander Cohen has gone to such an extreme that when you first meet him, part of his introduction is telling this man who is basically tied to a piano to keep playing again and again and again. And when he doesn't do it right, he blows him up.
Yes. I think that's one of the things that Bioshock does really well is character introductions. Like, you know exactly who these people are within like 10 seconds of meeting them, you know? Like, well, okay, with the notable exception of like Atlas, but Sander Cohen is a great example. Because you totally get that he is just totally postal. Steinman, the doctor.
Dr. Steinman is fascinating. I'm fascinated by Steinman.
Oh man, that introduction to him is so visceral, and he's like the first boss, I would say, right, of the game.
Yes, definitely.
And to just come face to face with this like doctor who essentially was like, what's the word? Like a plastic surgeon, I suppose. At the time, just to see him like gone completely off the deep end. He's got people hanging above his workstation in like cross poses, flesh dripping off of them. Like, whoa, you knew exactly, like, you know, from that point on, like, I'm not dealing with anybody who's on planet Earth anymore.
Hung up as like his examples of failure as a doctor and as a surgeon, because he's just like, this one's too fat, this one's too tall, like.
Yeah, and they all look exactly the same.
And it's,
like, there's no difference.
So which is like, game design, limits on budget, you know, which one are we?
I'd like to think that it's a choice.
Probably. At this point with the remaster, it was probably a choice. On that note too, though, it's something I wrote down quite a few times while replaying this game. It's just that like the voice acting cast is superb in this game. Whoever these, I didn't dive too deep. There weren't a lot of in the voice acting world in particular, not a lot of like big names in this one that I was able to recognize. But just stellar cast, stellar performances all around. Not a missed beat in anything, including the hundreds of little diaries that you could find throughout the game. So just and that's something that'll kick me out of a video game in particular real quick. Oh yeah, it's just the voice acting. It'll voice turn acting me off so fast.
I hear you, because
voice acting where the tone is wrong. You know what I mean?
I hear you. Yeah, no, nothing will kill a game faster, I think. Yeah. So we talked about some characters that we don't like. The only character I think you do like by the end of the game would have to be Dr. Tannenbaum. Yeah.
And even she's like, if you know her story, she's kind of iffy too.
Little iffy. She does end up helping you, though.
She does.
Well, I mean, if you make the right choices.
True. She's the character that's on the redemptive storyline arc throughout the game, basically. She's the one that designs, that is responsible for designing what's called the Little Sisters in the game, which are, I don't know how else to put it, but sort of weird, cute little drug mules.
I think you have to elaborate a little bit.
No problem, because we haven't talked about this either yet.
No, we haven't, yeah.
So within the game, there's a substance called Adam. And again, don't know how else to put it, but like Adam is sort of like if meth gave you magical powers.
I think you're oversimplifying, but yes.
Oversimplifying, yes, but it is something that it is a substance that you could take within the game that allows you to do things like shoot electricity out of your hands, set people on fire, control the security equipment within your area, take control over people or machines within the area to help you out and stuff like that. It is, but it's sort of like if the Force was used as a drug and it had horrible side effects when you used it too much. Because that's part of the downfall of Rapture, is that people become addicted to this substance and start killing each other for it. And the little sisters are sort of, I don't want to say caught in the middle of that because they're part of the system itself, but that's it then. They're just like, they're a part of the system that's been set up within Rapture.
Right. So, yeah, and Adam too, like, part of what they say about it in the diaries that you collect, I think it's something that Tannenbaum says in one of her diaries, is like, once we started using Adam, you just had to like get more and more to help address the side effects of it. So it became like this, like any other kind of addiction. It's like you just need more and more and more for it to be effective. And they also use it to, they liken it to like clay or putty. Like Steinman talks about it being like clay because he uses it to help address the like plastic surgery things that he was up to down in Rapture. And yes, so the little sisters in the game walk around with these big hulking guys called Big Daddies, and the little sisters extract Adam from bodies around Rapture. Yeah. And Tannenbaum,
their entire purpose, that's all they do. So is that they are driven by the collection of Adam from people that have died.
Right. And Tannenbaum is the doctor that was behind the creation of the little sisters. And
also partially responsible for the creation of our main character as well.
Oh, right, which is revealed later in the game. But yes, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. There's nothing in this game that doesn't in some way somehow tie into the other one, and just it's, again, the storytelling in this game is masterful. It's so insanely good. Tannenbaum is a character that I really like, though, because it's, again, I do like the sort of redemptive storyline arc. I like the idea of, I love the character that's sort of on the path to redemption, and we come in the middle of that for her. The first moment you meet her is her trying to keep you from taking the Adam from the little sisters, which is why the Big Daddies exist, in order to protect the little sisters, because they collect all the Adam. And there's obviously what becomes called splicers, which is the common term for the addicts of Adam within Rapture that are constantly trying to get to it. And the first time you meet her, she is now trying to protect another little sister from you, but Alice explains that this is, it's a little messed up that now she decides she wants to protect these children, because it's like, you made this happen.
You kind of were responsible for this a little bit.
Yeah. Which does make it interesting in the first choice, because there's a bit of a choice element within this game of that when you do find a little sister and you get her away from the Big Daddy protecting her, because you can't just outright kill a little sister. Well, okay, you kill the Big Daddy in order to get to the little sister there. You have the choice to harvest her for her Adam, or you can rescue her and essentially take a smaller portion of the Adam that you would have gotten had you harvested her.
Right. And that leads to one of actually 3 endings. I found out there's 3 endings.
Yeah.
But basically, if you do the right, quote unquote, right thing and rescue all of the little sisters, then you get the good, quote unquote, ending. And if you harvest any of them, then you get one of the 2 bad endings, essentially.
Yeah.
And the 2 bad endings aren't really very different from each other. It's the same dialogue. It's just that one has like a saddish undertone and one is more angry. But it's essentially the same ending. Yeah. And then the good ending is like, you save all the little sisters and you return them to the surface. It's great. Yeah.
And I just want to say real quick, for the quote unquote good choice, one, you literally kill them for the Adam. The other one, you turn them back into like regular-ish kids. So I don't think we're in a realm of like quote unquote good choice or not here, Brenden.
I didn't know how bad it was because I've never killed a little sister. I've never harvested.
Dead. They're gone.
Really?
They're gone. Yeah,
I've never had the heart.
It's not in the first one, but in the second one, in Bioshock 2, and they might talk about a little bit in one of the diaries, but you find out that Adam is extracted from these like sea slugs that they find at these certain the slugs they find at certain depths. In Bioshock 2, the animation when you harvest the sisters is that they turn into the slugs and then you crush them in your hand.
I don't like that.
Yeah, I know, it's brutal. It's messed up. It's messed up.
I don't like that.
But obviously, to cover, again, as anybody who has been listening would know from our Mass Effect 1 conversation, you'd probably be able to assume the choices that me and Brenden made in this instance. I also did not. I didn't harvest them. I can't. I've done it. I did a run once ages ago where I did go through and harvest little sisters and hurt my soul because it's just... You're killing little kids. That's what you're doing in the game if you go that route. That's essentially what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's... Yeah, and plus the game balances out anyway because it's like I said, just like you get a bit less Adam if you rescue them versus harvesting them. But then they also bring you like 200 something more Adam.
Exactly. I was gonna say that's the thing. Like every 3 or so little sisters that you save, they bring you a gift package of like first aid kits and something else usually, and then Adam, like tons of Adam, like 200 Adam, which more than makes up for the difference in harvesting versus rescuing. So
I don't know about you, but by the time I got to the last fight in the game, I was pretty fucking OP for it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I got to the point in the last playthrough where I'm like, I don't even know what to spend my Adam on. I've got so much of it, and I don't need any more fucking engineering plasmid slots. Like, I was like, I'm good, and like, there's like 4 plasmids that I like to roll with combat wise anyway, so I'm fine.
Right.
That brings up an interesting question. So like, what's your rollout? Like, what's your favorite like couple of plasmids to roll with, and then like what heat are you packing?
I was pretty standard on this run, and that might have been because I was trying to get, not that I didn't enjoy playing it again, but I was trying to get through the story mainly and like take notes on like the primary stuff. But I rolled pretty much just like the 3 basics. I had fire, ice, electricity, and that was about all I found that's all I really needed. I occasionally used the Big Daddy hypnosis move for my plasmids. And then other than that, just like anything that made hacking easier or the security detection like slower. That was about all I rolled with. That's about what I tried to do anyway.
What about in the way of like artillery? Like what do you what are your favorite like guns to roll with?
Particularly, I'm a fan of it in most games. The shotgun in this game is particularly devastating. The shotgun's very good.
Yes.
It has way more range than it should have for a shotgun.
Absolutely. Yes.
I remember just standing like just a mile away from a Big Daddy, just blasting away and still doing a decent amount of damage to it.
Absolutely.
Other than that, I ran with the machine gun a lot. By the end, I used the crossbow quite a bit, but that was mostly to set up traps.
Really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, mostly for traps. I only ever used the crossbow on its own in a battle if I was completely out of ammo for my shotgun or my machine gun.
That's fair.
That was about it.
Which happens sometimes.
It does happen. It does happen. If you're going through, I went through it on easy, which I wouldn't recommend. It makes it a little bit, if you're trying to enjoy the game, it makes it a little bit too easy, and you kind of, the game sort of relies on a bit more of a higher difficulty curve, in my opinion. So I'd always recommend going on medium at the very least. But yeah, what about you? What did you roll with primarily?
Very similar. The Winter Blast, Incinerate, and Electrobolt, and then Telekinesis also, because there's sometimes where you're like, I need to get that thing over there. Okay, got it. Also, it's really fun if you're like low on ammunition to just like pick stuff up and chuck it at things, because it did way more damage than it should have, I think.
It's true. Telekinesis is a good one for just being like, I just need to get this guy away from me.
Yeah, pretty
Basically.
much.
Just throwing shit at him.
And then definitely shotgun because it's overpowered. Machine gun, especially with the anti-personnel rounds, because that was like so good.
Yes.
And if you upgraded the damage on the machine gun, like forget about it.
Oh yeah.
And then also like for setting traps, I went with the grenade launcher and like proximity mines because that I found that like easier to deal with like taking out the big daddies. You just like line up some proximity mines and then you back up a ways and then you're like pew, and he's like and walks through all of your proximity mines.
Oh, okay. See, I always had fun fighting the big daddy, so maybe that was it. Just like, not that I didn't, I definitely didn't think of it, maybe because I just had too much fun just like blasting away at him. And
no, I did not like that.
Okay, fair enough. Hey, different playstyles.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, the big daddies will fuck your day up, for sure. That's no lie. To which, if anybody needs the physical description for them, there's different iterations throughout the game, but the most popular version of the big daddy is sort of, picture like an old school scuba diver, but like stockier, chunkier, and one of his hands just has a giant drill on it.
That's it. That's a big daddy.
Yeah. And they just run around with these tiny little girls, keeping them safe.
Let's get a picture of that on the screen too. Here's a big daddy.
Yeah, that is a big daddy right there.
Ooh,
look at it. Apologies to audio listeners.
Oh yeah.
Oh right, this is a podcast.
I'm bad at my job. I'm sorry.
You are not bad at your job at all, sir.
So what are some of your favorite moments from Bioshock? Because I have a few.
Yeah, no, me too. The big, honestly, just like the big, especially playing through it again now, and having been a fan of all of the other Bioshock-esque games, and kind of knowing the bigger world layout that Kevin Levine sets up in a certain sense. I love the beginning. I love the beginning of that game, from the plane crash all the way through getting into the bathysphere, and then to the introduction to Rapture itself, and then coming up and having that your introduction beyond the beginning game, your first intro to Rapture, essentially watching a man getting gutted by a splicer. It sets up the game so well. It just sets it up really well, and I just that's a big moment for me, because within the first 5 minutes of the game, you understand what the game is doing, you understand the theme of it, and you at the very least understand what you're going to be trying to do throughout the game, which is escape Rapture.
Yep.
And it does it, and it sets everything up without a giant title card showing up on the screen, or like the dialogue is brilliant, and I love the dialogue and the writing in the game, but without like just a ton of exposition that goes on for way too long, like some games do. And it's so clever and it's so smart. So yeah, I'd say the intro of the game is probably one of my favorite parts. And then, a moment that is gut-wrenching at first and then infuriating on the second playthrough, which is the bathysphere explosion. I'd say about, I don't know, like maybe 30-40% way through the actual storyline of the game. Yeah, you're not quite halfway through at that point.
No, yeah, not quite. No, that sounds about right. Yeah, no, that whole moment. Again, Atlas has been leading you along, up until this point and saying like, "Oh, we've got to go. I got to get my wife and my child out of here. They're in this bathysphere over in blah, 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 blah. Like, we got to go save them." And you get, like, through all of this. You're fighting off enemies. You're killing bosses. You know, you're doing the whole thing. You're like, I'm going to save the family. And you get in there and you, like, do what you have to do to, like, release the bathysphere or whatever. And then, splicers start crawling down the walls and, like, heading toward the bathysphere. And it's all chaos, and then you're running down to get him, and then the bathysphere explodes. And it's heart-wrenching. You're absolutely right. It's, like, heart-wrenching.
Because you're convinced there's a woman and child inside of this thing that just got killed.
Yeah, absolutely. And then later on, after it's revealed that Atlas is not who he said he was, and that was all totally fictitious, he makes a point out of saying, I really got you with that wife and child, man. Oh, my poor wife and child. And it's just like, I didn't need that.
The turn from Atlas to Fontaine also needs to be talked about, just in terms of the game itself and just brilliant performance in general. That like, because it's Atlas in the game as is portrayed is Irish.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the character is Irish and has a very, very lovely, charming Irish accent throughout the game. And then right before he reveals himself to be Fontaine, he just has this take where he just has this, I'm not going to attempt the accent, but I mean, does this like, nice work, boyo. And you're just like, fuck.
Yeah.
It's the moment it comes, you're like, ah, no, this is the turn. Ah, shit. You still don't quite know what the turn is until he reveals that he is this other character named Frank Fontaine, who you've also gotten little nuggets and notes about throughout the game and whatnot, as essentially being, whereas Andrew Ryan is sort of a corporate enemy and villain of the game. He is sort of the, I'm trying to remember, it's, oh god, it's historical figure, famous bootlegger from the old days. They just did a movie about him with Capone, Al Capone.
Oh, Al Capone, yeah.
Yeah, sort of an Al Capone sort of surrogate within the game, as he's like working within, is on a surface level it seems sort of altruistic, because he's like working with the unions and trying to get workers' rights and, you know, standing up against the corporate shill that is Andrew Ryan and blah 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 blah. But it's, in reality, the guy's a mobster, like, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Who came to Rapture because he saw an area that he could exploit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Real stand-up guy.
Oh yeah, what an absolute gem.
Yeah. One of my other favorite moments is it's, and only because it's so off the track of what has been happening up until the point, but the introduction to Sander Cohen, where you're going to the bathysphere to like go to the next area to get to where Andrew Ryan is, and the game is just like, nope, actually first you've got to deal with this fucko.
Yeah. Hold on real quick, we've got one last bit of insanity we gotta throw in.
Yeah, and the like, just to paint a picture, you're heading through this like Art Deco, like, you know, world, and you're heading to this bathysphere to get down to the next area, and the bathysphere descends, pink curtains come out, the lights change to purple, and these like statues on ropes descend from the sides, and this like statue of the rabbit ear mask that is a big icon in the game comes up behind from where the bathysphere was, and you're just like, what the shit is going on now?
I think I figured out a good way to sort of describe Sander Cohen as a character. Take Salvador Dali, but give him the appetites of Ed Gein.
What?
Oh, you're not a true crime fan. Ed Gein was a famous serial killer who would dig up bodies or kill people and then use their his skin to make clothing or furniture and stuff in his house.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
American Horror Story season 2. That guy.
Sort of, yeah.
Gotcha.
A very macabre artistic taste.
Yes.
To put it plainly.
Very much, yeah. Which is so juxtaposed by the like showmanship that he has and the like pinkish purple pallor he likes to put in the, you know, it's so like cognitive dissonance there. It's
true. And again, it's just like we talked about it before, just such a fascinating character. So interesting to go through. That whole area is one of my favorite stages in general.
Yeah.
Even though it completely derails you from the main story.
Completely. Because that whole section could not be there and the game would still survive.
Yeah, like, and normally that would ruin a game for me, but I love it.
Yeah, no, it's yeah.
I think it's just so interesting. I think that's the thing about it. It's just like, I'm sure there was probably an argument in the development process where it was like, this doesn't need to be here necessarily, but there was just the argument, it was like, yeah, but this is like one of the more, not that anything else in the game was like boring necessarily, but this is definitely one of the more interesting parts of the game, is going through the whole like Sander Cohen stage of like all the different areas and whatnot, and incredible game design, like level design for that whole thing too.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. I think part of what makes it so interesting is that like the other parts of the game were like kind of bigger idea areas, like the garden or like residential area or whatever. And this specific part was it was like shopping. It was like a mall essentially, and it was kind of cool to see that like snapshot of like you could imagine people like walking through here and like seeing a live show at the amphitheater and getting clothing and like buying cigars at the tobacco emporium. You know, there was just a lot of like things there that made it more real.
It's something that Bioshock, Mass Effect, and to me, Dead Space, which is another game we're gonna have to play, by the way, for the podcast. Sorry, Brenden. That they all have these. They all do a very good job of establishing a world that feels like people live in it.
Yeah.
Like Rapture, as dilapidated as it is, it feels lived in.
Yeah.
And that's a really cool feeling to get across in a game. I love that about it. Just yeah, but kind of in line with the Sandra Cohen thing of just like a very interesting part of the game is that the game puts you in a spot storyline wise in which that you have to become a big daddy. And it takes you through. I don't know how they get around what happens afterwards. I don't know if they quite address it. If you get out of the suit, if things change, but essentially, you have to find all the different parts of what the Big Daddy wears. You have to get your vocal cords readjusted, and then you have to get hit with a specific pheromone that attracts the little sisters to the Big Daddy. It's just another prime example of like, you're very clearly playing a video game as you have these established, you have your established quests and the little like stages you have to get through to get to it. But it never feels like minutia. It never feels like bullshit in the game. If it all is served to a purpose of the overall storyline to it. And that's one of my favorites because it's you see the steps that lead to it and it's all very clear and it if you step outside of it, it probably wouldn't make any sense. But in the world of the game itself, this feels like the only choice and the only option. And that's what I appreciate about it. And again, this game is another prime example of something that invites exploration. And that even though these are main quest ideas, it invites you to sort of go, hey, what's that door over there? You should go check that out real quick and like run around. Well, maybe you need to go this way. No? Oh, well, look, there's a recording down here. Check that out too. Oh, look, more plasmid options. So that's just one of my biggest like favorite moments in the game is the whole becoming the Big Daddy sequence.
Definitely. It's definitely different. It's one of those things where you're like, I think I'll know roughly how this will go, and then it doesn't quite go the way that you think it will.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
like,
that's true. That
like when you get like your vocal cords change and that's basically just like a to your throat.
This game is dark. Yeah. Like it is a very morbid game.
Definitely. Do you think that the main character's vocal cords were forever changed, or do you think that Tannenbaum was like, here, drink this Atom real quick and you'll be fine?
I don't know. Like, it has to be, right? It has to be. I have no clue. I really have no idea. Something I've always asked, just like, well, what? Because just based on the look of the game, you lose the helmet after all that stuff.
Yeah. No.
So I don't know. Yeah. No idea.
Let us know what you think happened to the main character's vocal cords after the events of Bioshock.
The only downside for me in the game, honestly, is the last fight, and that's only because if you go in really OP, it's kind of a
cakewalk.
It's kind of a cakewalk. Yeah. Even though so basically the end of the game, Fontaine, after the big reveal, now has access to all of the collected Atom within Rapture at this point, and uses it to, as he puts it himself, to attempt to make himself like a god, pretty much. And then your job at the end of the game is to go and basically take all the Atom back away from him, so he doesn't have these insane powers, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And the fight itself is set up to where it is. It's a basic fight. You fight him in like, what is it? It's like 3 or 4 different stages, essentially.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. Because he's got like 4 vials of Atom as his like health bar.
Yeah.
that you have to extract from him, and it's very like boss fight. It's like stage 1, first form, stage 2, second form,
Yeah.
and on and on.
Which is, it's not bad. I'm not saying that it's a bad boss fight at the end. It's just if you've been even a little bit smart with how you use your atom, or just like before you leave each area, just make sure you either harvest or save all the little sisters. You're gonna have plenty to be able to fight them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just upgraded one weapon by the end of the game, like all the way, you're fine.
I mean, at least it had a boss fight. Unlike
we can't get into this. We can't get into this now, Brenden.
Unlike
it's a different podcast. It's a whole other podcast, and we will have this fight then. We will have this fight then. Brenden is teasing the fact that me and him have very differing opinions on Bioshock Infinite. In that I think it's another masterpiece, and Brenden is wrong.
Wow. In so much that Jordan thinks that a game without a satisfying last boss fight is okay. And
I think as long as the ending is satisfying and interesting, we're fine.
Oh, so you agree with me then?
We can't do this here. We can't get into this right now.
Keep listening, everybody, so that you can hear us argue about Bioshock Infinite sometime.
Oh, it's gonna happen. That is going to happen. We just can't do it here.
I think that's all the time we have in the main quest, Jordan. Let's go to the bonus stage. Hey everybody, so we've made it to the bonus round. Jordan, what do you have for us today?
Today, I've got a fun new game that I'm calling Pitch Meeting. Basically, Brenden and myself will be taking turns as playing the big-time Hollywood producer, as the other person pitches us their cast and director for a Bioshock movie. I've gotten it down to where we're just casting the 4 of the main characters from the game, so Jack, the main guy, Andrew Ryan, Frank Fontaine / Atlas, and Bridget Tenenbaum, and also giving us their idea for who a director is as well. So, say that, it could go either way, say that Brenden is pitching to me first, he gives me his ideas for what he thinks, and then has to be open to me asking questions about why he picks certain people, be able to argue and counter any problems that I have with the cast list and whatnot, and then just general discussions from there of what we think.
Excellent, cool. So, who would you like to have first be the one pitching their cast and director?
I can go first if you want me to.
Sure, please.
Okay, so, and to explain a little bit, this game came to me as this is something that I always end up doing in my own head when I play video games. It's like, okay, so in the movie adaptation, who would I want to play this? Because I want the dream cast and the dream director in my head to be real, because video game movies often suck. So at least in my head, there's a version of the video game movie that is like
That's
really, really
great.
good. Yeah. So I'll just start from the top and go for... no, I'll start with my director first, actually. I went through a few options, and then I landed on that I think that Jordan Peele would make for a good director for this thing.
Oh!
Especially with movies like Get Out and Us, he kind of lives in the world of the macabre, and with something like Us, even though it is set very much in our world, he is really, really good at working in a sort of like post-apocalyptic environment. And I think if you and is a master when it comes to working within that world and making social commentary at the same time. Yes. So I feel like he would be a good take for something like that, to be able to, whether would be working the script or not, he'd be a good person to sort of help navigate an audience through that. Moving to my next one, let's go with our main character, Jack. Mm-hmm. For him, I just kind of went through a list of options of actors that I really like right now, because he is this silent protagonist in a video game. He doesn't have a lot established character-wise. He could kind of do whatever you want. And so I figured, since it's kind of an open book for whatever you want to go for, let's just go with this year's sexiest man alive and just cast Michael B. Jordan. I mean, because, one, the man is a brilliant actor. He is an absolutely fantastic actor, and I love watching him in anything he does. But just, why not? Let's throw that guy in there.
Okay.
My next casting choice would be for Bridget Tenenbaum, the doctor. I went through a few options there, and then ultimately decided, and this is the one that I have the least strong argument for. It just feels right for me. I went Daisy Ridley.
Daisy Ridley.
Daisy Ridley, yeah.
Really? Tell me more.
I don't know what it is. I wrote down a few others. I had Diane Kruger. I had Marion Cotillard, Renee Goldsberry of Hamilton fame.
Okay, yeah.
And I don't know, for some reason out of all those options, I just felt Daisy Ridley just hit me the most for some reason. I don't know specifically what it is. I think it's because throughout the main example for her to me obviously would be the Star Wars movies, and she just has a very, at least in her presence in that, with like her interactions with like BB-8 and some of the other characters in the movies and whatnot, she has a very nurturing side to her, but also can also represent a very cold and tough exterior, as we see in those movies too.
Mm-hmm.
So just something kind of hit me there with like that balance of Tannenbaum, where it's like this is a woman who has had to survive in Rapture, but still has a caring side to her as well. And I feel like she'd be able to kind of play and dance within that.
Very, very interesting choice. That puts Tannenbaum much younger than like I would place the character.
It does, and I thought about that too.
How do you justify that?
I mean, it's a movie. We're casting it differently.
We just age her up. It's fine. We'll get it in post.
There's nothing in it that says that Tannenbaum has to be older.
You're very right. Who's your choice for like Andrew Ryan?
I want to save Andrew Ryan for last.
I'm so sorry.
that was no, you're totally fine. Just that was my toughest choice on this.
Okay. All right.
My next one for Frank Fontaine and Atlas, I eventually landed on Luke Evans.
Okay.
Yeah. You know who that is, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure. I just for being able to do that transition from Atlas into Fontaine and have somebody who could sort of play a charming, much softer side within Atlas and kind of get the audience on their side, but then still be able to have that dark turn into Fontaine. Mm-hmm. And also was a physically intimidating presence as well. I kind of felt that Luke Evans kind of hit like all the tallies on that one, because the other ones I had for that was I had Colin Farrell and James McAvoy.
Oh, okay.
Would be happy with,
would be great.
Obviously would be totally happy with any of them because they're brilliant actors, but just like Colin Farrell, I feel like wouldn't be able to handle the transition as well, and McAvoy doesn't have the physical presence that Luke Evans has. So I eventually landed on him because I was just like, I feel like he'd do well with that transition and just like his presence. He's like a 6'2", just like broad dude. I feel like he would just sort of have that commanding presence that Fontaine would need.
I hear ya.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. And then
Andrew Ryan was so hard. Andrew Ryan was so freaking hard. But it's another one sort of like with Tannenbaum. I just went with what spoke to me. Joel Edgerton.
Who?
I was wondering if you didn't know who that was. So, his name isn't super known, but he's one of those actors where once you catch him, you don't forget him. I'm
a big time Hollywood producer. I know just who he is.
Yes, of course, Joel.
But why don't you tell the folks at home so that they know?
He's in the last iteration of The Great Gatsby. He's DiCaprio's rival in that film. He's that other guy.
The other guy. Okay.
Yeah. He wrote and directed this really interesting thriller called The Gift a few years back. I didn't think you had seen it. And the last big one that I know that he did that I can remember was, did you ever see that Netflix movie Bright?
That's the one with Will Smith, and it's like a fantasy buddy cop kind of.
Yeah. It's like a fantasy world set in like modern times.
I didn't watch it, but I know what you're talking about.
Fair enough. Well, he plays the Will Smith's like orc partner.
Gotcha.
In that movie. He's a brilliant actor. He's really, really good. He's got the right look for it, and he's one of those, I don't want to say like weird method, but he's one of those like intense method actors who would like dive into like the voice and how Andrew Ryan carries himself and stuff like that. And just like, again, tough choice because the other names I had down, I had Bryan Cranston, Jeffrey Wright, and Benedict Cumberbatch.
That would be so great.
It would be. Again, no one I'd be mad at seeing. No one I'd be upset at seeing.
I would love to see Benedict Cumberbatch do that. Oh, that'd be so
He
great.
He would be so good. But again, if you look him up and you recognize Joel Edgerton, I feel like the look is perfect, and he would really dive in and get intense with that role.
So then, pitch to me. What is your concept for this movie? Like,
pitch my concept.
Yeah, like, is it like, do you film it like, like set in the, like, okay, do you do it like a modern movie, or do you set it like in the 50s, like a 50s movie or something, or do you do noir? Like, what's your concept? Tell me concept, kid. Where you going?
Well, I would say in all honesty, you sort of adapt what the game itself kind of does, where it takes that sort of old school setting. It kind of makes you think it's gonna set it up in that way, and kind of do what like an old school like 1950s, kind of like what you're joking around with the producer character. But then it just kind of hits you real raw, and gets very real really fast on you. So I think that's the way that I would do it. I would want to set up to where it's like it feels sort of like an old timey film, but then just like not real intense, really brutal, and just doesn't hold back any punches. So yeah.
Cool. I like it, kid. I think I'll produce your movie.
Gee, thanks, mister.
I was supposed to be a Hollywood producer.
That was more just for the structure of like the game itself, or like the excuse to be able to pitch it to somebody else on the podcast. I did not. Nowhere in my notes does it say Brenden embody an old-timey fucking producer.
I didn't realize it said Brenden don't have fun.
All right, so any other questions, any thoughts on my casting choice?
No, I think that sounds great. I think everything sounds great. And I especially love Jordan Peele as the choice for director. I was just, when you said that, I was like, ooh, yeah.
It makes sense, right?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
The other two I had down was, another one that I think makes perfect sense, and what I would have had to argue way more on, was I had David Fincher. So, Seven, Fight Club.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That kind of stuff. And then I also put down Taika Waititi.
Fair enough. Well, my choices were a little bit more
hold on. Since we're getting into it, let me. All right, kid, tell me your story. What you got? What's your pitching here? What's your movie?
Mister, well, I've got a real big idea for a big Hollywood movie. You see. See, it's more fun when you play along,
Jordan.
Jordan.
How people have talked for like 200 years.
Okay, in all seriousness, so
I'm sorry, let me be a modern day producer. All right, go ahead. Garrett, don't cut that.
He wasn't going to.
I know, I'm just making sure.
Okay, so sorry, I'll start with my choice for director, because I think I think that he would tell the story really well. And that the work on some of the more monstrous characters would be really cool. I chose Guillermo del Toro.
That was another thought that I had too.
I think it would be so cool. I just think it would be so, because I mean, all of the work that he's done, just like those monsters would be so cool and so visceral. So I think he would be really, really good. I think he would tell the story too, and like handling like the narrative of like dropping the little bits of hints of the storyline.
Yeah.
So I think he would handle that really well. For Jack, the main character, I chose, this is gonna be an unpopular opinion. I chose Chris Pine. Cause he's like kind of pretty, but like somewhat forgettable.
Yeah. Oh, ouch. Damn. I was like, I'm so on board. I love Chris Pine. And then you just fucking slammed him.
Like, I think he's great. I do, but like when it comes down to it, just like, yeah.
Is this your statement on who is the more forgettable Chris in Hollywood? Is it him?
Absolutely.
Oh man, it's so fucked up. I love Chris Pine.
Sorry about it. I think he would do great. I think it would handle everything fine. And like stunts and stuff, and just like just being that like kind of hero-y aspect, I think it would be perfect.
Okay.
For Andrew Ryan, I don't know if you know him, but his name is Richard Coyle. He's not been in, I think, anything that you've seen, but if you've watched The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina on Netflix, he plays the headmaster of the like witches school, and he's like a bad guy. Very austere, like slicked hair, business like, that kind of aspect. And I thought he would just be perfect as Andrew Ryan. For Frank Fontaine, interesting choice. I chose Leonardo DiCaprio. I think he would handle both aspects very well. And like, I was thinking in terms of like, and walk with me. I was thinking in terms of like being somebody who hasn't played Bioshock and doesn't know the storyline, getting completely won over by the Atlas character, only to be betrayed when he reveals himself to be Frank Fontaine. I was just like, ooh, that's good.
Yeah, that's true.
I thought that he would do it really, really well in both aspects, and totally win over the audience in the first half. So yeah, I thought that was my best choice for that. For Bridget Tenenbaum, I'm gonna name an actress you probably don't know the name of, but you've seen her. Her name's Miranda Otto.
That sounds familiar.
Okay, so she plays, again, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, I'm sorry, but she plays Zelda Spellman, one of the aunts. You would...
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Yes.
Okay.
She's brilliant. She's amazing.
She's great in, like, lots of stuff. You've also probably seen her, or you would know her better, or the audience would probably know her better, from Lord of the Rings. She plays Éowyn. She has... So this is kind of why I brought up the question about the age of Tannenbaum, because you put her younger, I put her as like an older female. When I
cast, I just took age out of the equation for it.
I think that Miranda Otto would handle that role really, really gracefully.
Oh, she'd be brilliant.
Yeah, I think that she would be wonderful. And then I have one more secret cast member that I've thrown in. I wanted to cast Sander Cohen because that's a character.
Awesome. Okay.
Jordan, tell me you don't want to see the Bioshock movie where Sander Cohen is played by Nathan Lane.
Oh my god. I didn't know I wanted something so much until just now. God, that's so good, Brenden. God, that's so good.
I spent like all of my good choices on Nathan Lane, and the rest were just fine. But like, come on, could you imagine?
That is really, really good. That's perfect. That's really, really good. Yeah. Yeah. I think somewhere between, to sort of drop the Hollywood producer, I think somewhere between our two lists we have a really good run for a Bioshock movie. I like your choice for Tannenbaum way more. I think Miranda Otto is a really, really good choice for that one. I do, unfortunately, have a concern for Del Toro as a director.
Okay.
And it's a small one, and it's just that he has, particularly, because you mentioned his work with like the monsters and the creatures within the world. Mm-hmm. He has a very specific look when it comes to a lot of his stuff. Like, you can see a creature in a movie and go, that is a Del Toro monster. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that would have been my only thing, would be if his own aesthetic would sort of take over the already established aesthetic of Bioshock.
I see that.
Would be my only concern. And it's a small one. It's a totally small one. But that would be my only concern there with Del Toro. Everything else there I get. I also don't really... I looked up your guy you pitched for Andrew Ryan, and I don't know him. He's got a good look for it, though. Mm-hmm. I'll say he would have a perfect look for Andrew Ryan, for sure. Mm-hmm. He's got a bit of a smarmy sort of like...
Yes, yeah, that's exactly what it is. He's totally smarmy and totally like sure of himself. Yeah, anyways.
Yeah. No, I like it though. I
think between the two of us, so Jordan Peele is director and Guillermo del Toro is like executive producer. I think that's...
Oh God. I mean, you just pitched any movie I'll ever watch until the day that I die now.
Oh my god, if I'd watch it so fast.
Dude. My Little Pony the movie, directed by Jordan Peele, produced by Del Toro. I'm in.
Hey everybody, that's all the time that we have for today, but for you, we want to know, what did you think of Bioshock? What were some of your favorite moments, some of your favorite characters? What plasmids did you roll with? Let us know about all of that. Did you go for the good ending, the bad ending? And how would you cast the movie version of Bioshock? Let us know in the comments or fire off an email to us. You can also let us know if you have any ideas for future concepts or games that we should talk about. You can send us an email at 3vopodcastteam@gmail.com to give us your ideas. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at 3VO Podcast. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe to our show, and we'll see you next time. Bye!